the plane crash that killed the president of Pakistan, President Zia.
Yes.
Who comes across, I have to say, as an absolute nut bar in this book.
Really?
Yeah. I think you knew that.
He's probably much worse in real life.
Because he's kind of funny in this, you know, and he never actually orders anything unpleasant in this book, I don't think. But things unpleasant happen as a consequence of other things that he wants.
I mean, I think that's how, like, you know, sort of one man kind of, you know, sort of rules. I mean, I think that's how they work. They don't kind of, you know, sort of the man himself doesn't always kind of sit and order every single execution, or does not, like, you know, sort of always say go arrest that person. It's that they create an apparatus which works like that. And my problem is that I grew up. I was 11 when he took over, and he was like the most annoying, boring kind of man who kind of, you know, came in and completely fucked up what till that time was like fairly decent liberal kind of, you know, struggling, but still, you know, that kind of society. And he came in with his kind of, you know, completely berserk ideas, and you know, sort of would sit on TV and lie every day. And then then he found these great friends in Washington DC, and as a result, like, you know, sort of he was always there. He was there for 11 years, and I think he sort of died when I was, like, you know, sort of in my early 20s. So it's not just me, it's like a whole generation of, like, you know, sort of Pakistanis and Afghans have had to live through that. Even now I can't have like a proper conversation with a friend or a colleague of, like, you know, sort of Pakistan without his name being mentioned. And he died 20 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. But in a strange kind of way, a lot of what we see today actually can be traced back to him and his friends in Washington DC. So he, in a way, that was inevitable that he would come up. In the beginning, I didn't want him to be the main kind of character, but I did want Ali Shigri to somehow meet him. But the problem is that if you're like an all-powerful dictator and then you've got this little soldier, young guy, how do you know, sort of you meet? The logistics of it would have been too contrived. Not that this one is not contrived. So I just thought that maybe I was a bit impatient. So I just thought let's let's try and get into his head and see what happens. So that's how he kind of became like one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah, he's pretty creepy. A lot of creepy characters in this book.
But there were lots of creepy people around at that time, and there are lots of creepy people around even now doing basically similar things. I mean, this is beyond irony. For 11 years, we had a military dictator who was America's kind of closest ally and who was fighting this fight. For the last 10 years, we've had a military dictator who's America's closest ally and is fighting this fight. I mean, one can't even begin to kind of, you know, sort of say that is it ironic? Is it like, you know, are there parallels? I mean, journalists kind of talk about stuff like that. But I kind of, you know, somebody who's kind of actually lived through the consequences and seen what happens to people's lives and what happens to these countries and these places. I just find it kind of appalling. Like, you know, sort of one can't even begin to describe, like, you know, that, what these guys have done. So yes, there are lots of creepy people.
I mean, a lot of these quite terrifying characters from 20 years ago, people who, you know, got a lot of blood on their hands, come off as buffoons and fools. And do you worry that someone's going to get offended by that characterization of these guys as funny when they were really quite horrible?
My hope is that since Pakistan has kind of lived through these long dictatorships and they know these characters, so they will kind of recognize something which is like, you know, they've seen and lived through. And Pakistan has had a very healthy tradition of kind of humor. That's how we've kind of, you know, lived through these periods. I mean, I have cartoonist friends who were brilliant while Zia was alive. They kind of made their kind of careers out of drawing his cartoons, and went into like real depression after he died because they didn't have a subject for the longest time. So I just hope that it will be taken in that spirit.
It's a very funny book, and it's a fun read. Dying to figure out how it all sort of all these strands coming together, going, how the hell is this ever going to? But it gets there.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Nicely done. The book is A Case of Exploding Mangoes. I've been speaking with the author Mohammed Hanif, and A Case of Exploding Mangoes, published by Bond Street Books, distributed in Canada by Random House.